What happens when a billionaire crosses paths with a poor boy singing on the streets to feed his sick mother? Stay with me, because this story will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about kindness, family, and fate. Before we go deeper, tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now. The city was alive with movement, laughter, and noise. Cars honked impatiently, vendors shouted out prices, and children weaved in and out of crowds. But beneath all that life, there were corners hidden in silence, corners where pain lived. In one of those corners lived a boy named Daniel. He was no older than 12. His eyes were wide with innocence, but behind them was a story too heavy for a child. His clothes were worn out, his sandals broken, and yet he carried himself with quiet dignity. Daniel had once lived in a happy home. His father, a school teacher, was a kind man with dreams for his son. But life had a cruel way of cutting dreams short. His father fell ill with a sickness that doctors in the local hospital couldn't cure. Medicine was too expensive. Nights were filled with prayers and tears, but within months, his father passed away. The man who had once been the protector of the family was gone, leaving behind Daniel and his mother. The blow was too much for his mother. Grief broke her, and soon her health began to fail too. She developed a chronic illness, her body growing weaker with each passing day. She could barely stand without coughing, barely sleep without pain. Daniel was left as the only hope. He would go to school in the morning, trying to focus on his lessons, but the weight of hunger gnawed at his stomach. When classes ended, while his classmates ran home to eat warm meals and play, Daniel's day was only beginning. He would rush to his mother, check if she had survived the day, and then pick up the only weapon he had, his voice. Daniel had a gift, a natural voice that carried emotion. He would walk to the bus stops, to the crowded markets, to the open streets, and sing. Not for fame, not for applause, but for survival. His songs were desperate cries, telling strangers the story of his mother's sickness and his hunger. Sometimes, people dropped coins in his small tin can. Other times, they pushed him aside as if he didn't exist. But Daniel never stopped. On nights when the cold was too harsh and the streets too empty, he would sit beside his mother's mat and whisper to himself, "Tomorrow will be better." Now let us pause. If you're listening right now, take a moment and tell us in the comments. Where are you watching this video from? What time is it in your country as you hear this story? We want to know. Across town, there lived a man who had everything Daniel didn't. Mr. Edward Williams, a billionaire. He owned hotels, companies, and estates. His life was wrapped in luxury. Wherever he walked, people bowed. Wherever he spoke, people listened. But deep inside, Edward's heart carried an emptiness. His riches had given him power, but they had not given him peace. Edward was known for his discipline. He woke at the same time every morning, ate the same meals, and spoke with authority in every meeting. But he was also known for being strict, sometimes cold. He believed money could fix anything, yet he didn't realize money could not buy trust, honesty, or love. Beside him was his wife, Clarissa. She was elegant, beautiful, and sharp-tongued. Clarissa had grown up in wealth herself and believed poor people were poor because they were lazy. She loved her husband, but she often whispered poison in his ear, convincing him not to trust outsiders, especially children like Daniel. On one particular evening, as Edward was returning from a business meeting, traffic on the highway slowed to a crawl. His luxury car glided smoothly, but suddenly he heard something unusual. A sound, a voice. He turned his head. There, on the corner of the street, was Daniel, singing. His voice rose above the noise of cars, cutting through the air with emotion so raw it made Edward's chest tighten. Drivers honked impatiently, but still, people stopped for a moment to listen. A boy with nothing, singing with everything he had. Edward rolled down his tinted window. His driver looked back nervously, unsure if this was wise. But Edward raised his hand. "Stop here." He stepped out, his expensive shoes touching the dirty street. People gasped. It wasn't every day a billionaire left his car in traffic. He walked slowly toward the boy. Daniel's voice shook, but he kept singing, clutching his tin can as if his life depended on it. When Edward stood before him, Daniel lowered his head, too shy to look up. Edward asked in a deep voice, "Why are you singing here, boy?" Daniel swallowed hard. "My mother is sick. My father is gone. I sing so she can eat, so she can have medicine." Edward stared at him for a long moment. This boy's eyes held no lies, no tricks, just truth. And in that instant, Edward felt something he hadn't felt in years. Compassion. Do you believe in fate? Because what happened next would change all their lives forever. The boy's life had never been easy. His father was once a strong and hard-working farmer who provided for the family. But sickness slowly weakened him until he could no longer work. The boy was only 10 when his father passed away, and from that moment, everything in his life changed. His mother, who was once lively and full of joy, also became sick. She tried to hide her pain with smiles, but the boy could see how weak she was. Each time she tried to stand, her body shook, and her coughs grew worse. The boy was the one who cared for her, cooked for her, and fetched water. But he knew that medicine was expensive, and love alone could not heal her. After school, while other children went home to play, he would walk to the streets to sing. Singing was the only way he could get money. Some people stopped to listen, some dropped a few coins, while others ignored him or mocked him. Still, he kept singing because he had no choice. His mother's life depended on it. Far away from the boy's small wooden house, a billionaire lived in a mansion surrounded by gates taller than the boy's home. The man was sharp, ambitious, and feared in boardrooms. He had built his empire from nothing and was admired by many. But in chasing money, he neglected his family. His wife was gentle and kind. She longed for love and attention, but she was often alone in the huge mansion. Every night, she sat at the dining table, staring at the empty chair across from her, waiting for a husband who rarely came home in time to share a meal. One evening, as the billionaire sat in traffic on his way home, tired and restless, he heard a sound that made him pause. A boy's voice rose above the noise of the street. It was pure, powerful, and full of pain. The sound pierced his heart in a way he could not explain. Have you ever heard something so strong that it stopped you in your tracks? Tell me in the comments. I want to hear your story. The billionaire asked his driver to stop. He stepped out of the car, his expensive shoes touching the dusty ground. People stared in surprise. What was a man like him doing on the street at night? The boy kept singing, his eyes closed, pouring his heart into every word. He didn't even notice the man standing in front of him until the billionaire gently tapped his shoulder. The boy opened his eyes and froze. He had never seen such a well-dressed man up close before. "Why are you here singing on the streets at this hour?" the man asked. The boy hesitated. He wasn't used to strangers caring about him, but something in the man's voice made him speak. He explained how his father died, how his mother was sick, and how he had no choice but to sing for money after school. The billionaire listened carefully. For the first time in years, he felt something break inside his chest. He remembered his own childhood, the days when his family struggled to survive. He had promised himself that money would protect him from pain, but standing in front of this boy, he realized money had made him forget what struggle felt like. The man reached into his pocket and handed the boy a wad of cash. But the boy shook his head. "I don't want money like this. I want my mother to live. Please, sir, can you help her?" The billionaire was stunned. Most people beg for money, but this boy begged for his mother's life. He told the boy to take him to his home. The boy led the way, his voice trembling with both fear and hope. When they arrived at the small, broken-down house, the billionaire's heart sank. The roof was leaking, the walls were cracked, and inside, a weak woman lay on a thin mattress. She smiled faintly at her son, then coughed painfully. The man turned to the boy and asked, "Is this your mother?" The boy nodded, tears filling his eyes. The billionaire promised to send doctors to treat her. But what happened next, no one could have expected. If you were the billionaire, what would you do at this point? Would you walk away, or would you get involved in the boy's life? Tell me in the comments. The next morning, a black car stopped in front of the boy's house. Out stepped two doctors carrying medical bags. The neighbors watched in disbelief. No one in the area had ever seen doctors visit this part of town before. They whispered to each other, wondering who the rich man was and why he cared about the poor widow and her son. The doctors examined the boy's mother carefully. They checked her pulse, her breathing, and ran some quick tests. After a while, they said she needed urgent treatment in a hospital. The billionaire didn't hesitate. He ordered his driver to arrange an ambulance immediately. Within an hour, the boy's mother was in a clean hospital bed, surrounded by machines and nurses. The boy stood by her side, holding her hand tightly. He kept whispering, "You'll be fine, Mama. You'll get better." His eyes never left her face. The billionaire watched quietly from the corner of the room. For years, he had been surrounded by luxury, yet he had never felt the kind of love he saw between the boy and his mother. It touched him deeply. Later that evening, the billionaire drove home. But when he entered his mansion, his wife was waiting. Her face was cold. "Where have you been?" she demanded. "I was helping someone," he replied calmly. "Helping," she scoffed. "You, a billionaire, helping strangers from the street? Do you know how dangerous that is? These people are poor because they are lazy or criminal. You'll regret this." The man frowned. "Not everyone is poor because they are lazy. Some are poor because life was cruel to them. That boy works harder than many rich men I know." His wife didn't like the sound of that. She warned him to stay away from the boy and his mother. But the billionaire's mind was already made up. He wasn't going to turn his back on them. Meanwhile, the boy's mother slowly began to recover. The doctor said she would need weeks of treatment, but she was responding well. The boy visited the hospital every day after school, always singing softly to his mother. Nurses often stopped to listen, touched by his voice. One day, the billionaire surprised the boy at the hospital. He said, "I want you to come live in my house. You shouldn't have to struggle like this anymore." The boy was shocked. He looked at his mother, unsure what to say. She nodded slowly. "Go with him. This is your chance. Don't waste it." The boy agreed. The billionaire took him into his mansion, promising to treat him like a son. But what happened next would change everything. Have you ever trusted someone only for things to turn upside down? Tell me in the comments, because what's about to happen will shock you. The boy stepped into the mansion for the first time. His eyes widened at the size of the house. Marble floors stretched as far as he could see. Chandeliers sparkled above him, and golden frames lined the walls. He had never imagined such a place existed in real life. The billionaire smiled and said, "This is your new home now. You don't have to worry about hunger or suffering anymore." But standing behind them, the billionaire's wife folded her arms and gave the boy a sharp look. She didn't greet him. She didn't smile. She whispered under her breath, "This boy doesn't belong here." From the first night, she made her feelings clear. At dinner, when the servants served food, she told them, "Don't give him the best portion. Give him the leftovers. He's used to it." The boy stayed quiet, bowed his head, and ate without complaint. The billionaire noticed, but the boy refused to say anything. He didn't want to appear ungrateful. Instead, he worked hard to show respect. He cleaned up after himself, thanked the staff, and always greeted the billionaire warmly. Slowly, some of the workers in the mansion grew fond of him. But the wife didn't stop. She told her husband, "You're wasting your time. This boy is after your money. Sooner or later, he will steal from you." The billionaire shook his head. "You don't know him. He's different." One afternoon, the boy was walking in the garden when the wife approached him. Her voice was low and threatening. "Listen to me carefully. I don't want you here. If you're smart, you'll leave before something bad happens to you." The boy swallowed hard but didn't respond. He turned and walked back to the house. That night, as he lay in his new room, he thought about his sick mother still in the hospital. He promised himself he would endure everything. No insult, no humiliation would drive him away. He needed to stay strong until his mother was fully recovered. Weeks passed. The boy began to bond with the billionaire. Sometimes he would sing in the evenings, and the billionaire would sit quietly, listening. The songs reminded him of his own childhood and the days when his parents were still alive. For the first time in years, he felt peace. But trouble was already brewing. The wife had a plan. She whispered to one of the workers who was loyal to her, "Tomorrow, I want you to take something valuable and hide it. Then we'll accuse the boy of stealing. My husband will see I was right all along." The worker nodded in agreement. The trap was set. The next day, chaos erupted in the mansion. An expensive gold watch belonging to the billionaire was missing. The wife called everyone together. Her voice rang through the hall. "Search the boy's room. I told you he would steal. Now you'll all see the truth." The staff hesitated. They liked the boy, but they couldn't refuse her orders. They entered his room and searched. Under the bed, they found the watch. Gasps filled the air. The boy froze in shock. He had never touched the watch. He tried to speak, but his voice trembled. "I didn't take it. I swear I didn't." The wife pointed at him with a smirk. "There. Proof. He's a thief." The billionaire looked at the boy with disappointment. His heart sank. "I trusted you," he said quietly. The boy shook his head desperately. "No, sir, I didn't do it. Please believe me." But the billionaire, blinded by what he saw, turned away. "Pack your things. Leave this house." Tears filled the boy's eyes as he walked out of the mansion that night. The same mansion that had given him hope now cast him back into the cold. He returned to the streets, broken and confused. Do you think the billionaire should have listened to him? What would you do if you were in his place? Tell me in the comments. But what happened next will change everything. The boy returned to the streets that night with nothing but the clothes he was wearing. He had nowhere to go. The cold wind bit at his skin, and the hunger in his stomach grew sharper with every passing hour. He sat under an old bridge, clutching his knees, wondering how everything had gone so wrong so quickly. His thoughts went back to his mother. She was still lying in the hospital, waiting for medicine and care. He had promised her he would never give up. That promise was the only thing keeping him from collapsing in despair. The next morning, he forced himself to stand. He went back to the market, where he used to sing. He opened his mouth and began to sing again, his voice weak from hunger, but still filled with emotion. People stopped to listen. Some gave him coins, others simply stared, feeling pity. Far away in his mansion, the billionaire couldn't stop thinking about the boy. He sat in his office, holding the same gold watch in his hands. Something didn't feel right. The boy's tears, the desperation in his voice, and the way he swore on his mother's life. It didn't match the face of a thief. That evening, he asked one of his trusted staff members quietly, "Tell me the truth. Did you see anything strange when you searched his room?" The man hesitated. He had seen the other servant, the one loyal to the wife, slip something under the bed before the search. But fear of losing his job kept him silent. Finally, he whispered, "Sir, I think there's more to what happened." The boy didn't look guilty. The billionaire's suspicion grew. He decided to test something. He asked his wife, casually, why was the watch under his bed and not anywhere else? She smiled too quickly. Because that's where he hid it, obviously. Her answer didn't satisfy him. That night, he couldn't sleep. The boy's song played in his memory. He remembered how pure it had been, how it seemed impossible that someone with such a heart would betray him. Meanwhile, the boy's condition grew worse. He barely ate. He tried to keep singing for money, but the pain of being falsely accused weighed on him. One day, as he sang near the hospital gates, his body gave out. He collapsed to the ground. Nurses rushed to help him and recognized him as the son of the woman inside the hospital. When the billionaire visited the hospital to make a donation a few days later, he was shocked to see the boy lying weak on a stretcher in the hallway. His face was pale, his lips dry, but his eyes opened slightly when he heard the billionaire's voice. "Sir," the boy whispered, forcing out words with difficulty, "I didn't steal it." The billionaire froze. For the first time, he felt shame. Do you believe the boy should forgive the billionaire? If you were in his place, would you give him another chance? Write your answer in the comments. The truth was about to surface, and what followed next would leave everyone speechless. The billionaire could not rest. That night, he called his most trusted investigator, a man who had worked for him for over 20 years. He gave him one simple instruction: find out the truth about that boy. Leave no stone unturned. The investigator got to work immediately. He interviewed staff, checked camera footage, and examined the boy's room again. At first, nothing appeared unusual, but then he noticed something strange. One of the security cameras had a small gap in the recordings on the very night the watch was discovered. Someone had tampered with the system. Suspicion grew. He quietly traced the access logs and discovered that the only person near that area during the gap was the servant who had always been close to the wife. When the investigator pressed him, the man cracked under pressure. He admitted in a trembling voice, "Madam told me to put the watch under the boy's bed. She said it was the only way to protect the family." The investigator immediately reported back to the billionaire. The truth hit him like a thunderbolt. His wife, the woman he trusted, had orchestrated everything. She had manipulated him into throwing out an innocent boy. The billionaire felt his chest tighten. Anger, regret, and disbelief all collided in his heart. He realized he had punished the wrong person. The boy had lost everything because of him. The next morning, he went straight to the hospital. He found the boy still lying weakly by his mother's side. The woman looked at him with tired eyes, whispering, "Why are you here?" He could barely look her in the face. He knelt beside the boy's bed and said, "I was wrong. I failed you. Please forgive me." The boy looked away, his face filled with both pain and mistrust. He didn't answer immediately. His silence was louder than any words. The billionaire left, determined to make things right. He returned home and confronted his wife. "Why did you do this?" he demanded. She tried to deny it, but the evidence was clear. The investigators' report, the servant's confession, and the tampered footage all pointed to her. Her face hardened. "That boy was dangerous. He was stealing your attention, and soon he would take your empire. I only did what was necessary." The billionaire stared at her in shock. The woman he thought he knew had turned into a stranger. Do you believe the boy should accept the billionaire's apology after what happened? Or should he turn away from him forever? Share your thoughts in the comments. The billionaire had one last plan. He would test the boy in a way no one expected, and the outcome of this test would change their lives forever. The billionaire knew words alone were not enough. If the boy returned, people would question his loyalty. He had to prove himself, so the billionaire decided to test him. He arranged a meeting in secret. Through the investigator, he sent word to the boy, offering him a small job at one of his companies. The boy, desperate to care for his mother, accepted without hesitation. On his first day, the boy was given simple tasks. But unknown to him, every move he made was being watched. Cameras followed his steps, recording everything. The billionaire wanted to see whether he would fall into temptation. Later that week, an envelope filled with money was left on his desk. No instructions, no explanation. Just cash lying there, easy to take. The boy looked at it for a long time. His hands trembled. His mother was sick, the bills were rising, and this money could solve everything. But after a long silence, he pushed the envelope aside. "This isn't mine," he whispered. "I won't take it." The investigator, watching from another room, reported the moment back to the billionaire. For the first time in weeks, a faint smile spread across his face. But the test was not over. The billionaire wanted to be absolutely certain. A few days later, the boy was asked to deliver documents to a different department. Unknown to him, one of the files contained a key contract worth millions. If it disappeared, suspicion would easily fall on him. When he noticed the file, he stopped. "Why would they trust me with something this important?" he muttered. He thought of slipping it into his bag, but then he shook his head firmly. "No, I'll take it straight to the office." He delivered everything perfectly. Nothing was missing. That evening, the billionaire finally revealed himself. He walked into the boy's small office, dressed simply, without his usual bodyguards. The boy looked up in surprise, almost dropping the papers in his hand. The billionaire said quietly, "I tested you. Twice. You passed both times. You've shown me who you truly are." The boy was stunned. He lowered his head and replied, "I don't need your tests. I only want to help my mother." At that moment, the billionaire knew he had found someone rare. Honest, loyal, strong. Do you think the billionaire should bring the boy fully into his family now? Or should he still wait? What would you do if you were in the boy's position? Share your thoughts in the comments. But this was only the beginning. The real challenge was still ahead, because not everyone wanted to see the boy succeed. The billionaire, now convinced of the boy's integrity, decided it was time to bring him back into his life, not just as a helper, but as family. He visited the hospital once more, this time with a heart full of resolve. The boy's mother was improving steadily, her cheeks regaining color, her cough fading into whispers. She looked at the billionaire with cautious eyes as he spoke. "I want to adopt your son," he said gently, "not to replace you, but to give him the future he deserves." And you too. You'll have a home with us, where you'll never want for care again. The mother hesitated, her hand trembling as she held her son's. But seeing the light in the boy's eyes, she nodded. If he agrees, then yes. But promise me you'll protect him from harm. The boy, overwhelmed, hugged his mother tightly. For the first time in months, hope felt real. Back at the mansion, the billionaire gathered his staff and announced the news. This boy is now my son. Treat him as such. Whispers spread through the halls, some joyful, others uncertain. The servants who had grown fond of the boy cheered quietly, but not everyone was pleased. The wife, seething with rage, paced in her private room. She had heard the confession from the servant, knew her plan had failed, but she wasn't done. If I can't drive him out, she muttered, I'll make sure he never inherits a thing. She began plotting in secret, reaching out to shady lawyers and old contacts, aiming to forge documents that would question the boy's legitimacy and tie up the billionaire's fortune in endless legal battles. Days turned into weeks. The boy moved into the mansion, but this time with his mother by his side. She was discharged from the hospital, her health restored thanks to the best treatments money could buy. The boy enrolled in a prestigious school, where his natural talent for singing caught the attention of teachers. He even joined a choir, his voice bringing joy to assemblies and events. The billionaire mentored him personally, teaching him about business, integrity, and life. They spent evenings in the garden, where the boy would sing old folk songs from his village, and the billionaire would share stories of his own humble beginnings. Wealth is a tool, he told the boy, but honesty is the foundation. Never forget where you came from. But shadows lingered. One evening, the wife confronted the billionaire in his study. You're making a mistake, she hissed. That boy will ruin us. I've seen the papers. Rumors are spreading in the city about your charity case. People think you're going soft. The billionaire looked at her steadily. The only mistake was trusting you blindly. I've seen the truth now. Her eyes narrowed. She stormed out, but not before slipping a forged letter into the boy's school bag, a document claiming he had stolen from the mansion before. She hoped it would reach the school authorities and disgrace him. Have you ever faced betrayal from someone close to you? How did you overcome it? Share your experiences in the comments below. The next day, chaos struck again. The school principal called the billionaire, voice grave. We found a letter accusing your new son of theft. We must investigate. The boy was pulled from class, confused and scared. Tears welled in his eyes as he protested his innocence. I didn't do anything wrong, he whispered. The billionaire rushed to the school, his heart pounding. He demanded to see the letter. As he read it, recognition dawned. The handwriting matched samples from his wife's desk. He confronted her that night, evidence in hand. Why? He asked, his voice breaking. We could have had a family. Peace. She laughed bitterly. You chose him over me. Now you'll lose everything. But the billionaire was prepared. He had his investigator dig deeper, uncovering her secret meetings with lawyers and her attempts to embezzle funds from his companies. The evidence was overwhelming. In a quiet divorce, she left the mansion with only what she brought into the marriage. Her pride shattered, her schemes exposed. With the storm past, peace finally settled over the home. The boy's mother fully recovered, her laughter filling the halls as she helped in the garden, teaching the boy traditional recipes from their village. The billionaire, free from deceit, found joy in simple moments, family dinners, walks in the city, and listening to the boy's songs. 1 year later, on a bright afternoon, the billionaire stood before a crowd at a charity event. Beside him was the boy, now 13, dressed in a fine suit but with the same humble eyes. This young man taught me that true wealth is in the heart, the billionaire announced. Today, I'm establishing a foundation in his name to help children like him with scholarships, medical aid, and opportunities to sing their dreams into reality. The crowd erupted in applause. The boy stepped forward and sang, a powerful melody of hope, struggle, and triumph. His voice soared, touching every soul in the room. Tears streamed down the billionaire's face as he realized this was the peace he had been searching for all his life. And so, the poor boy who sang for his sick mother became the heir to an empire, not through greed, but through unwavering honesty and love. His mother lived in comfort, surrounded by family. The billionaire found redemption, turning his fortune into a force for good. In African folktales, we learn that kindness returns 1,000-fold, and truth always prevails over deceit. What lesson did this story teach you? Tell us in the comments, and if it touched your heart, hit that like button, subscribe for more inspiring tales, and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that miracles happen when we least expect them. Until next time, keep believing in the power of hope.